Go.
Good everyone, welcome along to our council meeting this afternoon in a new location down here in Taitapu. Nice to be back in this building where we meet quite frequently as works have been done in Rolleston. Welcome along to anyone that's watching online and to all our guests in the room here today. And if you'd like to stand, and we'll say the council karakia and affirmation. And I'd invite Councillor Bland to share today.
Kia ora, whakatakatiha ki te uru, whakatakatiha ki te toanga. Kia makina kina ki uta, kia matara ki tai ihi aka ana ti arakura, I teo, I huka, I hahu, ti hai moriora. Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always be prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of the Selwyn District and its community. We will.
Everyone's present today, no apologies. Any identification of extraordinary business anyone has? Nothing's been raised with me. David? Nothing. Any conflicts of interest that haven't previously been identified that people would like to raise today? None. We get to a public forum. And Lizzie Hodd and 24/7 team, Jay Gildard, and great youth workers from around our district, if you'd like to come to the front of the room. I'll just also say I used to be a 24/7 youth worker, so I have a slightly slanted view on, I'm growing older now and haven't been in that space for a while, but did used to be a 24/7 youth worker. No longer paid or on the payroll for them. We allow 10 minutes for this conversation and for you to be able to present to us and any question and answers that councillors might have. So thanks for coming.
Kia ora, ko Lizzie Tukuingwa. It's great to be here today. Thanks so much for having us. So I'm speaking today on behalf of 4 youth trusts represented here behind me. The 4 youth trusts work in different areas across Selwyn with the 24/7 Youth Work Network. Each of our local youth trusts is connected to a local church and therefore connected into its local community. And over the last decade or so, each of our 4 trusts has employed 24/7 youth workers to go into schools, into local Selwyn schools, to provide presence-based youth work. That's who we are. Now, I don't know how many of you recently have spent much time in school or spend heaps of time hanging out with young people, but in case you don't, we're here today to tell you some of the highlights of working with the rangatahi of Selwyn District. So hopefully we've got a few photos running around too, where you can see some of the stuff that the youth workers get up to. You can see the fun activities that they are running in school and in their communities. As I was putting the photos together, I realised that actually there's often lots of food and drink involved, often not that healthy, but sometimes. You'll also see them running workshops like team building or wellbeing workshops or stuff like that. But the things you can't see in the photos are arguably the more important things that the youth workers do. It's the listening ear, the one-on-one chats, the random high five in a corridor that you actually learn afterwards meant a big deal to a young person who was having a really tricky day that day. We can't show you photos of young people's lives who have been touched by an encouraging word or by company through a tough time, but these are what the 24/7 youth workers are all about. It's what makes them do what they do. So when I knew I was coming to talk to you guys today, I asked around for some stories to tell among the youth worker team. There are so many stories, but we've only got 10 minutes. So here's a current story from a current youth worker in their words. When starting at Rolleston, I noticed this student, let's call her M, was disruptive and silly in class. She was often outside the classroom. She was always covered in ink or paint and seemed to be completely uninterested in schoolwork. After spending a bit of time with this student, I noticed she doubted everything she did and had no self-worth. During an art class, she found it was hard for her to colour in the word believe, because in her own words, she said she didn't believe she had anything to offer. This student was one of the first put forward to attend the Inspire Girls programme we ran over term 3. Inspire covers topics related to self-worth, self-esteem, body image, personality, friendship, and family issues. It was during this programme that I started to see a change in Em. She stopped drawing on herself, stopped leaving class, started believing she had something to offer, and even completed a speech. I saw an outstanding piece of poetry she wrote on Anzac, which was really emotive and creative. Her teacher actually called me in to show me this piece of work and stated she had noticed a big change in Em over the term. By getting to know this student, how she is at school, what her home life is like, plugging her into the right programmes, I've seen what role youth work plays in a young person's life. How a youth worker can impact someone's schooling just by being present and seeing the unseen. I am super proud of the turnaround in Em and trust she will now continue school with a better desire to learn. What a great story. If I had time, I would tell you loads more stories like that, but we don't have time. So we are mostly here today to say thank you, Selwyn District Council. So for the last decade, Selwyn District Council has provided half of the funding for the 24/7 youth workers in Selwyn. Thanks to the council vision for the youth of the district, these 4 trusts represented have put presence-based youth workers in local schools so that over many years, hundreds of young people have been supported and encouraged by the youth workers as they've made their way from childhood through to adulthood. But there is a but. The Selwyn District Council funding model changes from next year, and that will have big implications for us and our work. We are really grateful to Shay Robinson from the council, who has been working with us to encourage us to start thinking now about different streams of funding from July next year. We do want the youth workers to continue to be able to connect with young people in school and out of school. But unlike many community organisations, most of our costs, our biggest costs, are wages, because we think that the presence-based model, having a person there with a young person, is what makes all the difference in a young person's life. From next year, we will all need to find different funding streams for our youth workers' wages, because we won't be able to apply for funding for wages from the council contestable fund. So, conclusion from me, hopefully you can tell that we feel that we make a difference in young people's lives in Selwyn. And we couldn't have done it for the last 10 years without your partnership. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you can tell also that we love young people. And it has been really encouraging to know that you have been invested with us and that the council also cares deeply for the young people of this district. Thanks again for helping us meet all those needs in our community. And that's all from me, but we've got a few minutes left, so I can hand over to Jay Geldard, who is our national network coordinator, to kind of give a bit of an overview, hopefully, of what 24/7 is nationally and how we fit into that.
So 24/7 began 22 years ago, just down the road in Riccarton High School, and has now grown into New Zealand's largest youth work school-based service in New Zealand, in 81 schools, 200 youth workers. Here, the legends behind me in Selwyn. And our heart is to see young people thrive. And when I say our young people, it's our young people. It's not just the school's young people. Those young people are part of families, they walk the streets in our villages. They're our young people. So what we do is presence-based, hang out with them. It's not as sexy as some of the programs that come in, because we're there day in, day out. But when a crisis hits, like COVID, like an earthquake, like a tragedy in the mosques, we are there, in lockdown. We were locked down with these students. We are there. And so I want to thank you, Council, for being there for your young people. By backing us, you're backing our young people. And if I can change my hat for a moment, as a dad who lives in Rolleston, thank you for backing our rangatahi. The word rangatahi, ranga is weave, tahi is one. That rangatahi is one weave, and we've got kids who are isolated, kids who are out there and they need to be connected. And that's what these guys do in collaboration with you, in collaboration with the school and the churches and the businesses, that we have to work together to get that rangatahi to be connected. So I see you and us as rangatira, as chiefs. Rangatira, ranga is weave, tera is group. We are weavers of the group. And so by you investing into what we do, you're investing into our young people. And so as a dad, I say thank you, because it impacts my kids. I also sit on a school board which has youth workers. And every year we get presented the budget and we know we can't pay the full cost. We had to let go of our librarian to keep youth workers. That's how bad it's got. So thank you, Selwyn District Council. We see your name on that budget line, contributing towards our rangatahi and our tamariki. So thank you for what you do. It seems like a lot of money. I know it hurts. It hurts the schools. It hurts the churches and businesses who contribute. But your part is playing a massive difference in the Selwyn community. So thank you for that. My final thought is this, is that what we do is audacious. It's crazy. And one of the things we are doing is even tackling, it's called e tu tangata. It's around tackling the tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand. There's something in our culture that says your success is somehow a threat to mine. And our young people do not see themselves as having any value, and it needs to change. So this is going across all schools in New Zealand, 8,000 schools. And so your contribution into what these guys do means we can give this away for free. With Steve Hansen, he's helped us develop it. So we're doing more than youth work, but thank you, Council, for what you're doing. And we look forward to chatting some more around the next 10 years and how we can collaborate. So thank you, Sam, and what you do and your team of Rangatira. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
And are there any questions or that people have around the table?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Malcolm.
You're great work, you guys. I'm very aware of what you've been doing as I've been around this table a long time. What other funding sources are available? Is there anything new out there that you can get a hold of? Is there anything in the wings?
We hope so. That's what we're going to be working on seriously over the next few months. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much for your presentation. And I think as you get older, you become more aware of youth. It's not this actually the opposite to what you would think. But I mean, it's quite an informal process that we've gone through just today. But could I ask perhaps that you put more thought into a more formal approach to the council with a few more, so then you're not constrained by time, and present to the council, or give it to Sam, a presentation document as to actually what you do, what perhaps you're paid, and I'm sure it's just about nothing, and what funding you need, and then we can, instead of just in this forum, we can look at it a little bit more in a little bit more depth.
Sure.
And I think it would be an advantage to you to do that.
Yeah,
Sure.
And we'd love to do that.
Cool. Thank you for coming in today. And youth workers, thank you for what you do in our schools and the young people that you all support. It's really appreciate it. Jane, Lizzie, thanks for your presentation.
Thanks so much.
And Shane, did you want to say something?
Sorry, I should have jumped in when everybody else was having a kōrero. I just wanted to say to everyone, inga mana, inga reo, e rau taumahi o 24/7. Thank you very much for your presentation. And the reason that I actually put my hand up for this position within council was to help our rangatahi also. And Ben, he's here today, and just wanted to say thank you very much to Ben, but also to all of you for the incredible impact that you're having on our rangatahi within the region, in the district, and especially East. And I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen the turnaround some of our rangatahi have had with your guys' input. So I appreciate your support and ongoing support. Thank you very much.
You're welcome to stay with us for the next couple of hours of meeting, or just leave whenever you like. Thank you. We have the minutes of the ordinary meeting from 23rd of September. Someone moved that the true and correct record, Alexander and Mugford.
I will note, Mr. Mayor, that I sent a correction through for under number 7 on page 18, just a clarification of what I was quoted of having said.
Any further comments on that? And Nicole, did you have a comment you'd like to make there?
Yes, thank you,
Minutes
Sam.
right?
Yeah.
Matters arising?
Matters arising from the minutes. As everyone must know from the last meeting, I was an apology, and I saw with interest on page 18 on section 7, and Councillor Miller, I think, brought up about footpaths, thank you, and asking about footpath widths. And obviously with the council meeting, as Andrew Mosey can only give quite a brief responses to all the questions. I did watch some of the live stream that was recorded on our YouTube channel. Question that I would have asked that day was, so Andrew's talked about it's going through with the proposed district plan, but my understanding, and confirmed with Andrew yesterday, is there's actually what sits beside it is the council's code of practice. So my question is around, and the footpath widths, my understanding, is actually sitting at the code of practice, is what is the process that goes through, as it's a separate document from the district plan itself, and we're obviously consulting on the district plan at the moment.
Murray Washington, are you able to answer that?
Yeah, I'll attempt to. Just got the detail of this morning, so taking a bit of work to go through. I'll just try to summarise this quickly. Through the district plan review, the question about best practice on footpaths was undertaken an external review. And then at that point, it was decided that the number of footpaths on a street would go through the district plan, and that would depend on the road hierarchy of each classification of road. So on obviously arterials and major roads, you'd have 2 footpaths, and on local streets, you'd have 1. So then the other recommendation was, well, that was a number of footpaths. The other one was around the widths. And so that went into the code of practice review. And the technical review recommended 2 things. The standard, what you call standard footpath, be 1.8 metres, and the shared path be 2.5. Now, the code of practice is still being worked through, but we're implementing through with developers as engineering plans are put up for approval. 1.8 minimum, if we can get more, we get more. And where the hierarchy dictate 2 sides, 2 footpaths, and whereas the shared path 2.5 metres. So although they are decoupled to some degree, because of we're actually operating on the new code of practice. It's getting adopted and adapted as we go through. It's being modified as we go through the process. There's also been some initial work also on cell and design guidance, which is also affecting the code of practice, and the intention to bring all those together at the end of the district plan process. So, but the developers are working on the intention of the new code of practice.
So, Murray, I think the key question is, when will we stop seeing 1.5 metre footpaths?
Well, you won't see any new being built. They're all new developments are being built to 1.8.
Councillor Miller?
Just a question. I mean, I was going to bring it up further in the accessibility report. Do you want to wait till then and have another go then, or do you want to? What is really, I suppose, I mean, it was related to accessibility as well. We're focusing on a future where we're going to have growth, and demographics tell us older people who are going to use mobility scooters, who are going to have limited mobility, who want to access the way around the villages. And even now, what I'm hearing from Mr. Washington is a significant departure from what we as a governance group asked for. It's, we asked for 2 metres minimum, now it's to 1.8, I understand. So where did we agree to that? I'm not sure I've agreed to that. So a 300 millimetre increase on a 1.5 is not much once you get grass growing on the verge. So I guess it's a disappointment to hear what I just heard. And I suppose when you look at the accessibility charter coming up, we're not focusing on our future. We know what the future is. We know it's coming. We've heard it's coming. The demographics tell us it's coming. So why aren't we planning now, especially with new subdivisions? It's critical that we do ask these developers who do make a profit, and let's accept that they put infrastructure in which actually benefits the community that's going to live in it. And I'm just not seeing that happening at the moment. It does worry me that we are continuing to allow this to happen when we've made a clear statement This is not the future. This is not accessibility. Let's do something about it.
David, I wonder if this could form part of a presentation from staff around the cost implications of the greater size, and that'll feed into LTP discussions as well. If you can add this to an agenda for a briefing session going forward.
Yeah, just as Councillor Grant was talking, I was writing down a suggestion that we actually bring that back to the that paper back to the November briefing meeting of council, just to gain an understanding, firstly around the wood, secondly around the process, and thirdly around the information that's been given to our developers. It's quite right to talk about mobility scooters. My experience is that one of the issues with them is not so much the width of the footpath, but rather the street crossings and the work that has to be done there as well. So we will bring that back in November briefing.
Thank you for those comments, everyone. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. One item requiring attention to come back on the 28th of October. Space for a report from me, and I guess the one thing I would like to highlight is we've now released the district plan documentation. There's a diary of meetings across the district for public to get involved in the discussion. And yeah, it's last meeting we have approved all this to happen, and now it's actually about the engagement process going well and ensuring that everyone is reached. And if you're watching this live stream or you're sitting here, we encourage you to get involved in this matter, because it's going to affect how our community grows, who wants to live here, how businesses can and can't operate for at least the next 10 years, and sets some standards for Selwyn. So get involved. And other than that, I don't have anything else to report, other than this morning, Councillor Reid and I met with members from the Rolleston Residents Association to determine a way forward for the town centre artwork. And the decision was made to work with Scape, who have done a lot of good work all around the place, but particularly in Christchurch. There's some public artwork on display, an exhibition on at the moment, which I recommend you going to take a look at. But it basically means we'll end up being able to use the best expertise we can locally to provide a great outcome for the town centre in Rolleston, working with our staff, working with community groups, working with young people, iwi and councillors, that as well. So that's looking positive. I'll just move you receive my report. Seconded, Malcolm. Any questions? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. Next we have the Chief Licensing Inspector, Malcolm. This is on pages 26 through 31 of your agenda. So first of all, just say, Malcolm, we really enjoyed the presentation and the background information to what your role entails at a previous session. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to explain to us the intricacies of your role.
Kia ora koutou, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'll take my report as read. The only other thing I'll just add is that this Friday is the Lincoln University Garden Party. For the first time ever, they have sold out entirely of all tickets. For those that may want to go out on Friday night in Lincoln, enjoy. It's going to be a big day. There's a lot of police working, a lot of security, and weather is not looking good, but last year it rained and it didn't slow the students down one iota. That's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
I enjoyed your presentation as well. I got a very clear impression that our licensed premises itself and Jim were well run and well managed. Just give some comment on that.
Absolutely, I'd agree with that 100%. We do not have, by and large, we do not have compliance issues in Selwyn District with our licensed premises. They are very well run, and yeah, I'm very, very happy with the way things are going.
Yeah, just a question on the caravan. Motorhome Association had a function at Darfield. I just wondered if you had any reports back on that, or you had anything to do with it at the end?
Certainly, the only thing I heard was that there were no problems at all. They had a great time, and it was a great success. That's what I was told.
Okay.
Thank you. The temporary authority for the Rolleston New World, that's a transition of ownership, is it?
Yes, so the Rolleston New World has changed hands, and got new owners down from Nelson that takes over next week, and they have been granted a temporary authority to trade until their one licence kicks in. New one licence.
Thank you. Is there a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Lemon and Miller. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next, we have the Management Accountant Financial Report to the 31st of August 2020, and welcome Calvin to the front of the room. And councillors, I'll just note the microphones are on a slightly different schedule than they have been in the past. So the first person to press the button has speaking rights, and other people light up green behind them, and you're only able to, your microphone only works once the person speaking has turned their microphone off. So if you do want to ask a second question of staff, you'll either go to the bottom of the list or just keep your microphone on while they're responding to you, just in case you want to ask something as a follow-up. Calvin.
Good afternoon all. The papers here, I'll just run through a few highlights of the paper, just to note that while we are in October, this set of financial statements are relating to the August period. Generally tracking favourable to the annual plan with a year-to-date surplus of 2.8 million, and that's 0.8 million ahead of where the annual plan set for this time. As you're aware, there remains a very full capital program ahead of us. At 31 August, we'd spent 13.7 of the 156.4 million plan. And the staff are remaining pretty focused on making sure that the forecast profile is being taken into account, and really twofold, just make sure that we're managing that program, but other than that is around the financing of the program and making sure we're dealing with the cash flows. General comment around the timing of this. It was still during COVID level 2, so that had an impact upon so with social distancing and other items, so our facilities numbers were down a little bit, but still reasonably strong. Diving into a few of the notable variances, pools, operating expenditure unfavourable. That was largely the unexpected maintenance, which we're all aware of, around the aquatic centre and the roof fixings. Positively, environmental services, consent numbers continuing to be strong. See revenue running ahead of plan, but on the other side, that's partially offset by increased operating costs associated with that. Building consent numbers in line with July, and processing slightly back, but all within the generally within the prescribed time, and resource consents up on last month at processing time within the prescribed time. LIM numbers, which are further on in the report, but 285 in August, and so the 3 years of data that's sitting there, that's the highest they've been, and we're continuing to track at those high levels. Transport, roading spend tracking over budget after 2 months. We're continuing to monitor that, and we'll keep a close eye on that. Water supply, a little bit of budget pressure around reactive maintenance and the monitoring program across the district. Just before I open for questions, just one closing remark on this. The annual financial statements will come before you on the 28th for review and adoption. Any questions?
Thank you. Page 51, Internal Council Services, note 3. I just wonder if that's a typo, where the payment to staff and suppliers was less than the budgeted figure, and yet it was labelled as unfavourable. I would have thought it was favourable if we've paid less than we budgeted.
Yeah, that's correct. That is a typo.
Kelvin, as you use the seat, I think it's well worth reviewing page 33, bullet point 2. It says this surplus is required to fund council's infrastructure renewal costs and new capex, and not available to reduce the level of rates required. I guess I'd just like to test that with you again to make sure that that statement is still factually correct, I suppose, particularly when we've got a decrease in interest costs, which are cash flow positive, staff costs, which are budgeted and not paid, and an increase in fees and charges, which, although there's an increase in costs in providing that, doesn't appear to be substantial to match that. So does that still stand true, that second bullet point, from your point of view?
Oh, look, I'd need to actually go back and do some analysis on that, and I'll come back to you on that. But it's sitting in the right direction on that. I do need to review that, and I'll come back with a statement within that next report.
Thank you. Moving a seconder for the report, McInnes and Alexander. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. Thanks, Kelvin. Next we have Jocelyn, Strategy and Policy Planner, rezoning land in Kuwi. If we need you. This is to accept the recommendation of the independent commissioners in regards to plan change. Moved Alexander. Seconded Epiha. And we'll get you to present the highlights of the report. You've come a long way.
I'm directionally challenged too. Good afternoon. Plan change 60 is a private plan change out in QE. I will note that the proponent of the plan change is also in the audience today. Essentially, it was lodged in May of last year. It's gone through all its processes. What it proposes is that existing land in QE be rezoned from Living 2 to Living 1, allowing for the intensification of residential development up to around about 120 odd allotments, 160 across the entire area of the plan change, but a number of those sites have already been developed. The plan change was notified, submissions were received, a hearing was held in July, I think, of this year. And a external commissioner has put forward a recommendation being that the plan change be accepted without modification. The report to council is to provide council with an opportunity to accept with modification or decline the recommendation of the commissioner, and therefore the plan change. The recommendation in the report is that the recommendation of the commissioner be accepted, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Cool, thank you. So there's 5 different recommendations here. Accept what the commissioner has done, approve plan change 60, approve public notification, delegate to the team leader strategy any steps necessary to give effect, and delegate again to the team leader to give effect. So those are the 5 points that are raised. Any questions for Jocelyn? Councillor Miller?
I guess it did worry me or concern me that NZTA and Christchurch City Council was submitting on this under the basis of the GCP, which seemed tenuous at the very, very least. Maybe it's unfortunate, I shouldn't question you on that, but it seemed to be very unusual.
Any submissions can cover any information. In my report, I dealt with them as being not on the plan change, and the issues that we're raising are more appropriately addressed at other forums. The report of the commissioner also concluded that there are obviously issues that are happening in those other forums, and Christchurch City took the opportunity to bring them forward into this plan change, but they've not been given any weight.
I guess not so much the Christchurch City, but I think NZ Wakakatahi especially is supposed to apply an even hand right throughout New Zealand, and to be submitting in this certain manner was unusual. I guess very concerning that they should do that.
I think, so NZTA and Christchurch City Council sit on the GCP, and even just at the last meeting there was some discussion and pushback on the idea, well, to reinforce the idea that we want vibrant towns surrounding Christchurch, and Waimakariri was very keen to ensure that the vibrancy of our smaller towns continues, and it's only through growth that that's actually able to happen. Some change, some renewal, and some growth as is proposed in this plan allows that to happen. So I think it's a bit disingenuous of the city particularly to say that we want you to support us in the central city, and then we're going to object to your plan changes that happen locally. And we'll bring that up with them when we have our governance meeting with them next. But around the GCP table, they're certainly aware of that. Malcolm.
Yeah, and it is an unfortunate trend that has emerged in the last year from our partner in the GCP over the fence. But this is a very good time to bring up the GCP in that the GCP 2050 revisioning document is out for public submission at the same time as our district plan. But it's very important that we as councillors let our township committees and people know that is there. That's the strategic document that we did 12 years ago, the Greater Christchurch Partnership document that looked at where we were going to put growth in the Greater Christchurch area to 2030. Well, it's now time for a refresh to 2050. So it is our opportunity as a community and for the communities of Selwyn to be able to have their say in that document. And it's very important they do so. It's tricky for us, and we do not want to cloud our own district plan with this as another consultation document. But failing to make some comment from our communities won't help us in the long term either.
Yeah, very good point. And so I suppose it's about speaking about the two things as one. We talk about GC 2050 and our district plan in the same conversation with people because the views on both are important. And the GC 2050 doesn't just include the area that's traditionally identified as Greater Christchurch. It includes all of Selwyn and all of Waimakadere. So interesting, including the Leastons and Darfields and Springfields in that as well. So it's been moved and seconded. No further questions. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thanks, Jocelyn. Next we have Robert Love, Darfield Water Treatment Facility, item number 5 on pages 103 to 119. It's not here. Moved Councillor Miller, seconded Councillor Bland. 3 things that we accept the recommendation of the Independent Commissioner, waive the appeal rights and delegates the team leader strategy to take any necessary steps. Councillor Hassan.
Yes, just one query, and it's a generalisation query with regards to our designations for our water supplies and our sewage pumping stations. Has anyone done an audit to see that they are all appropriately designated?
Yes. Yes and yes. Yes. The answer is yes. From both Murrays. Good. Councillor Levin.
Thank you, Councillor Hassan. Exactly the question I was going to ask. Very succinct.
If there's nothing further, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Item number 6 is on pages 120 through 144. It's the inaugural accessibility report. Moved Alexander, seconded Nicole. Do we have Denise or Claire? Claire, great. Hey, Claire. Claire, first up, I'll just say thanks for the report. It's the right-hand button. We'll turn your microphone on. I was talking to Councillor Reid earlier. Sometimes things come across our table and we agree that they're a good direction to go down, and a year later you wonder what's been done. It's really great to see that this has been picked up and run with, and staff have really taken on board the wishes of this council to be a more accessible place here in Selwyn so that all people can enjoy living here. So thank you for what you and your team have done, and I'll just hand to you if you'd like to overview anything in the report.
Sure, thanks. Sorry. So Mayor Sam signed the Accessibility Charter, on the 4th of November 2019. So since then, there has been a lot of progress, and they're all of the actions that teams across council have achieved are outlined in the report. So there are a couple of really outstanding success stories mentioned on the back as well, where people have gone sort of above and beyond what was required and what they said that they would do. So it seems like there's a lot of really good stories and good activity happening across council.
Any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor McInnes.
Working. Thank you very much. It's actually really great to see that, you know, there's been a
a set of targets and actually stuff's happening. So that's great. It was kind of a comment that may sit under several different things. I noticed in the news recently, Dunedin's been taking part in something called Accessible, which is where you get, it's like a disability aid for going on short nature walks, where they take photos sort of to help people, guide people with accessibility issues along short accessible walks, obviously. And just thinking we've got quite a few that might be worth investigating with that. So that would sit nicely in here and with our Parks and Recreation guys. Thanks.
Alexander?
Thank you, and thank you for the very full report. I'm really pleased to see this and the progress that's being made. I guess the question is, if council is setting the example on accessibility, is it flowing through in our development in our business community? Do you think they're picking up on what we're doing and setting a higher standard than the minimums?
It's hard for me to answer that. I guess it's sort of more probably a question that I can look into and see if we have information about that. I don't know of any research, but we can definitely have a look.
Yeah, that would be possibly in the year's time we get our second report. Would be good to know whether there's been a flow-on effect into the wider community from our setting the higher standard.
Yeah. No, that's great. And certainly in other parts of New Zealand, where there are things like accessible spaces, people do pick up on that and they become more aware of it. And, you know, as the population does age, it becomes more obvious. So, yeah.
Thank you. There've been Councillor Blance.
There's just one point, and it's probably directed at the CEO really, is from a point of view of recruitment, and I see that accessibility of opportunities is part of this program. Do we have an opportunity for people with disabilities? You know, and there used to be a time in the government where you had to have a percentage of people that had a disability, but to make sure that they weren't left out, and they are left out. What are we doing for those sort of people?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, we are very much an equal opportunity employer, Councillor Blaine, so we are not discriminating against anybody with any disability that may put their name forward for a position within council.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thanks, Tim. Clear. The next we have Animal Control Team Leader, Regulatory Manager, Steve or Billy. Yeah, no. Tim, if there's any questions that come in your way, just preparation. This is that we resolved that the Dog Control Policy and Practices Report for the period 1 July to 30th of June 2020 be adopted, that the report is notified in Council Call, that the report is sent to the Secretary of Local Government within 1 month of adoption. Move and seconder. Malcolm and Bob. Any questions? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Item number 8, potential water race closures. Moved Councillor Lemon, seconded Councillor Miller. This is on pages 151 through 168. The council approved the closure of 2 lengths of water race at 4.6 k's in length from the Ellesmere Stock Water Race Scheme. Are there any comments or questions people would like to make? Councillor Miller. Sorry, Councillor Lemon.
I'll take that as a compliment. Mistaken for Councillor Miller. Just a query really around the, obviously the process to close is fine, just making the notes there on the Crossgates Road one through Mr. Anderson's property, and noting that one is to remain open because neighbour requested still to use that, which is fine, that's the correct process. Does that leave Mr. Anderson still needing to pay a water race rate? And then is there any clarification on that? He will still be up. Is that on a boundary, Murray? I was trying to work out, looking at that, quite where his boundary was.
We travel as a pack, yeah. So it's actually probably more a rating question, but the answer is if there's a water race on or adjoining a property, they are accountable for a rate. So if that's the case in this instance, then they will be paying a rate.
So I guess the question of that, is there a net financial benefit to Mr. Anderson from closing that section, or is he still up for the same amount because he's got one on his boundary taken over his entire property?
There may be no financial benefit.
His benefit also fronts.
Except there may be a maintenance benefit for him that he no longer has to maintain the race through his property. I think we should also note that while this appears to be a pretty quick consideration to report, it's been through an exhaustive and lengthy process, and it's not something we're doing either lightly or frivolously. And I think the process, as has been mentioned, has been correct, and that it has had the due consideration.
Sorry, supplementary question, I guess. I guess that what I'm really getting at, that it highlights an anomaly, I guess, that, you get your water race closure, but you're actually financially no better off, negating the fact, of course, that there's a maintenance issue that's been abrogated. Is that something we should review as part of that, your survey out there, Murray? Is that something we perhaps need to take into consideration when we discuss that further?
Yeah, it is. So I'll probably touch base with on that in the next report, but that is part of the water race review. So that will come through the long-term plan for sure.
All those in favour of this report, say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. And if you can stay there, the next report is Asset Manager Water Services, that the council receives the water report for this month from a mover and seconder. Bland and Mugford. Murray and Elaine. Bob, do you want to say something up front, or are you happy to?
Well, it's just a question. In 3.2, the potable water, you've got rural water supply survey. It's got a rural water supply users survey was issued to all water race users. Is that correct? That it's a water supply, not water race? Or have I got it wrong?
What page are you looking at?
That's a typo. Yeah, no, that is
it's 3.2.
Yep, there'll be a typo.
Yeah.
Two surveys, both have water in the title. One has races additional, one has rural. So
it's
yeah. Well picked up. It's good to see that our councils are reading the reports. We often put these little snippets in there just to check.
So Murray and Elaine, if we just work our way through the report like we normally do and just work through wastewater, potable water, stormwater, land drainage, and water races.
Yeah, so first up is wastewater, and hopefully a bit of a good news item. In order to comply with section 7.51 of the Canterbury Air Regional Plan, we've been going through a process of adding odour control to all the air release valves and sewer pump stations throughout the district. And to allow this to happen, council have been working in conjunction with a supplier to develop a design that works specifically for Selwyn and the infrastructure that we have here. So to date, 22 air relief valves and 3 sewer pump stations have been fitted with odour control, and the project's continuing to roll out throughout the year. So completing this year's programme should mean that all operational air release valves within 100 metres of a residential property will have some form of odour control. I think so it's a good thing.
On that, you say that more further budget will be required. Do you have sort of an estimate of what sort of quantum we're talking here? Are we talking tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars?
It's probably order of tens, but they'll come through the long-term plan process. So we're on to section 3.2, potable water, rural water supply survey. 1,226 surveys went out. We had 106 responses. The results are on page 171, but you can see that we almost had a sort of 50-50 mix between those who wanted more water or those who were happy with how much they had. This is actually a really beneficial survey because there has been murmurings in the rural community of people wanting more water. And now we know who those people are and more importantly, how much water they want. So as part of the long-term plan discussion, we're bringing to you proposed upgrades to meet those demands where we can. After pass chlorination.
Yep, so that was just following on from the previous reports that we presented. Chlorination or permanent chlorination starting in Arthur's Pass on Wednesday, the 7th of October.
Perfect. Yeah, so if there's any questions on the water part of the report.
I guess I was with the potable water rural water supply survey, the challenge is probably you've only got a 10% response rate. Are we just assuming that the rest other 90% are actually happy? We don't. That's what we're assuming, aren't we? Whereas, given our engagement with our ratepayers, possibly over half of them could be saying, "Oh, well, actually, want more water," but there's no use actually sending the reply back. So, how do we just accept that as best we can do, or is there a way we can actually get a better response out of these people?
Yeah, I think the assumption that we are making as staff is that those who want water are the ones who have responded. And generally, if you're happy with what you got, then you probably didn't bother. As an example, for the water race survey, we sent out about over 2,000 surveys, but we had 786 responses. So that was a lot more diverse. Some people really wanted it left open, and some people really wanted it shut. So I think what we're seeing here is those who want the water or more water have responded. Those who are happy have just let it go.
I think just on that, the responses is just interesting that it's so much weighted in favour of people wanting more water, and access to water is obviously something that we're going to see an increase of going forward with the changes in our climate, but also the flexibility for people to do have different uses on their land as well. So yeah, there's only one that says they want less. So everyone else is in the neutral to more category, and that's going to have implications around number of wells, number of river consents, size of pipes, the laying of new infrastructure, and the costs of that going forward for our long-term plan. So it's good information to inform your planning.
It's interesting. We're probably hoping that the people wanting less and the people wanting more would balance themselves out just a little bit better than what they have. But we have actually got resource scent variations underway to attain more water, and there's a few other tricks up our sleeves which will come through the LTP process.
Great. Councillor Mugford?
Yeah, just how are we progressing with the Springfield water supply upgrades?
So there's a project in process just now. One of those things involves, or there's a raw water tank storage, a treated water tank storage, and also some adaptation to the process that's going on there just now in terms of treatment. So that's underway at the moment, and hopefully in the next few months we should have an answer for you.
So a week into the Arthur's Pass chlorination, you had any feedback?
No formal feedback, but there have been a couple of things mentioned to operators or the trades that are on site there. And it's mainly just that they can taste it, which isn't a surprise given the age of the infrastructure that's there, but nothing extreme.
We're not getting inundated with complaints.
And the process taken to turn that on was start small and gradually move it to the level where it's effective and safe, rather than slamming the system and hoping that, it'll die down over time. Great. Yeah. Councillor Mugford.
Yeah, Jenny and I both went to the Arthur's Pass AGM Monday week ago, and that was one of the biggest subjects that came up was that they weren't particularly happy. So we all know that.
While on the subject of water, can you give us an indication of how the wells are handling the levels at the moment?
It's probably something we can probably bring to the next report with more detail. However, I have had a quick look, as you'd hope we would have. And so the water levels are low, but they're not historic lows, but they are on the lower side of things. So we're interesting how things track as we head through into summer. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Hassan.
Thanks, Councillor Lyle, for that question. It's very pertinent to be able to monitor, because if you look at the land drainage at the moment, while the springs are still flowing in some areas, some of the drains have dried up very, very quickly already. So that tells us that it's going to be a dry summer and low water table.
Yeah, so for all of our potable bores, or at least most of them, we have pressure transducers down the bore casing, so we can actually measure the groundwater level. There's a wee bit of adjusting has to be done, because if you're changing the pump on, obviously it drags the water locally down, but we can work through that. So we'll present something next time around.
Thank you. Stormwater.
So the stormwater there is as read, but it was just meant to be a snapshot of what's happening in that space at the moment. The main thing being that the Leaston bypass, the stage 3 construction, kicked off on Monday. So that's great to see. So that will be continuing through until about Christmas time, and then hopefully stage 4 will kick off in February, but we're going through that design process now.
So, just a question on that timing. If stage 4 kicks off Christmas time, will that be complete for next winter?
Stage 4 will be February, and hopefully it will be, yeah.
And that'll bring us to the end of that whole process.
As there is a fifth stage that may potentially happen, we're still working through that design process at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions on stormwater, land drainage?
So this is just a quick update so that you know we're meeting with the chairs of the land drainage committees early next month, and that's just talk about the rating and governance structure. So it's something that's been well overdue a review. We've been through the other 4 waters. This is the last one to have a good look at. So the outcome of that will come to the long-term plan as well. Okay, so for water races, sort of repeating a wee bit here, but we had just over 2,000 letters went out, 2,394 to be precise. We had a good response, 786. So I know it's, in terms of proportion wise, it's not all of them, but in terms of the consultation the council has, it's actually a really strong response back. If you look at the graphs, as I laugh nervously, the result was split exactly down the middle, and you can't get more exact than exact, which is a wee bit concerning, but these are the results. We have had a number of late results, generally people who have asked for paper copies, so they want to do it through the electronic system. So for probably the last week, we've had a few dripping in. So the results are no longer exactly 50-50, but they're still in that rough order. So that's interesting. It's very polarizing, the water races. Some people are passionately wanting to keep them open, and other people are passionately wanting to shut them down. What we need to do now is go through and look at the areas of land of those who said yes and no, because although the numbers of properties are equal, it may be that the land area or mass may be different as well. So we've done some initial work plotting on GIS, and that's ongoing. And the worst thing that could happen if we get the sort of peppering of yes and no's everywhere, we're hoping to get some sort of big groups, and it's looking a wee bit like that, so that is positive. But we'll bring that to you guys at a later meeting. Next graph down, it's almost the same question, but it's kind of asking, are you sure you want it shut in some ways? And the people who said they want it shut weren't actually all 100% sure they wanted it shut. So there was actually 4% or 17 people who said we support it being shut, but actually no, don't shut our race. So maybe we don't want to pay for it, but don't shut it. I don't know. But it does give us a bit of indication. If we did want to set out some strategic races to be shut, those who said yes for both of them would be a good place potentially to start. Over the page 173, for those who wanted the race to remain open, we asked the question, why? And the response came back strongly that they want it for stock water, which makes sense, being a stock water race. But very strongly, people in the middle there were wanting it for amenity and biodiversity reasons. That came through probably stronger than we thought it would have done. And there's also a group of people who use it for irrigation, and they were wanting it open for that reason. We also asked the same group of people, if you do want it open, how much are you willing to pay for this race? Because the people who don't want it open, shut their races, well then the cost that the scheme has to run will fall on a smaller number of ratepayers. So by far the majority were happy for a 5% rate increase, and there's a chart explaining how that worked, and that's actually a 5% year upon year upon year. It's not just a once-off 5%, that's a continuous 5%, as are the other ones. And I suppose it was interesting to see that people were actually even happy to pay a 25% upon 25% rate increase to keep the races open. Be it a small proportion, but there were a range of responses there. You can see on that graph bottom of page 173. Over the page 174, so from this survey information, we have a bit of work to be done for the next long-term plan to work out what the strategy is and how that's going to work, particularly around the funding model. Second paragraph on top page 174, just see that the rating structure we put in place, the last long-term plan, is actually still fit for purpose. We've got 3 rating structures. It's just now a matter of adjusting those dials to make sure the weighting is correct amongst those, and that's going to be the big discussion, I think, for residents of Selwyn at this next long-term plan. I also just mentioned that we are looking at the Upper Ellesmere race closure, and that's something we will bring to council. We're hoping to bring it to this meeting, but we haven't quite got there, so it'll be no doubt the November meeting that comes through. There's a little operational comment here. Since I've got the microphone, I'll just carry on saying we have had some seasonal operational challenges around spring with variable river levels. So the weather may look fine, but then the water race drops out. What's going on? There may have been a flush in the Waimak River, for example, which has pushed out our intake, and that's been resolved, and then the water comes back on. So there has been a wee bit of fluctuation. That's hopefully behind us now.
Thanks, Murray. It's really great to have, it's quite exciting actually, to have good data to be able to make informed decisions about the future of something that's been such a key part of our district for a really long time, and will continue to play a role, albeit in probably a slightly different form than it has been. So thank you to both of you and to the staff that have gone out and done this, because it helps us not just stick a thumb in the air and think we know based on a few conversations that we've had with our community, but gives us really strong feedback on that. Murray Lemon.
Yeah, thanks, Marion Lane. It really partially we talked previously about the Upper Ellesmere race, Marion, and bringing that report to the next meeting would be great. I guess there'll be a degree of that we may have to discuss in PX as a commercial arrangement, so we won't delve into that at present. But I'm assuming you're around, and once we go into PX, there's a couple of other questions in this that relate to this report. If I
we'll just ask if you could stay on, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Okay. Sophie.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. I like good data. It's great. I can't. Yeah. Hopefully I love the survey was obviously tied to people's rate valuation number, so that's great that you can plot it all, and I hope you get some good clusters there. There was one comment that was made online, well, several comments that was made online around this survey, that one of the reasons why some people did want to keep stock races open was to do with water accessibility for fens during wildfire season. I was just wondering if was there anywhere in there in the survey that they could put that, or is that being taken account of as well anywhere else?
Yeah, so this survey was really about the users of the race specifically and willingness to pay for it. And so the next conversation is going to be more to the greater ratepayers saying, well, actually, some of these users don't want it, but if you want this race to remain open, well, then the public good rate is going to have to increase. And I think that conversation will come through there. It has been really interesting to watch Facebook. So the West Mountain Facebook page, for example, went off. There's hundreds of people commenting on that. And that's great, because it is a real discussion point for our community. A lot of people who don't have water races still appreciate them for the aesthetics going through the township, biodiversity reasons and things like that. So yeah, it will be a really interesting discussion to have. Yeah.
Councillor Hassan. Okay. I just wonder for the next report you bring back on water races, whether you'd be able to help identify some of the hotspots for water races operationally, where we continue to get called to, and just show us reassurance for the summer coming when we're talking about water levels perhaps being lower, a dry summer, the places where we have real pinch points in the network as it currently stands, just so we can get a feel for how it functions through the summer period. That'd be great. Thank you for the report. Next, there is the Three Waters grant and delivery plan that's here. I don't know if you want to touch on anything there.
Yeah, not too much, really, just to say that we have submitted our funding plan for the government grant that had to be done by 30th of September, which has been done. And the Canterbury Regional Steering Group has appointed a project manager, Rob Kerr, who's a great engineer, so I think he'll do a good job, to lead the development of an evidence-led internal review of the best delivery options for Canterbury councils going forward. Murray, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Murray. I will take the opportunity under PX to talk about the first item, which was the delivery plan for the Three Waters grant. Other than that, the regional steering group review, which is being undertaken, our first deliverable is next week. Next Tuesday, I think we have to deliver all of our activity management plan and infrastructure strategy information. The consultant would like to be on board in December. I would imagine it's going to be a significant pressure cooker to have all that done in time early next year for council to be able to make an informed decision on tranche 2. So still a lot of work to be done on that, but it's going to be a fair bit of a strain on staff if we are being required to provide a whole lot of information. And on that, the DIA are also coming out in the next few weeks on a significant request for information as well. So there could be an element of duplication of parallel reviews going on.
And I'll just add to that, the steering group for Canterbury and the appointment of Rob Kerr and the work that they're going to do. Canterbury is very focused on making sure that we have the best information for Canterbury councils to be able to make a decision on that timing next year. And very conscious of not duplicating the work that DIA wants to do. So we don't want to be paying for things that other people are already doing, but making sure that our data can match up with what Otago, Southland, West Coast and the top of the South are doing. So if there's any further decisions to be made, we don't want numbers that just don't marry with one another too. But the Canterbury's, because the IA is doing the larger piece of work and some of our neighbouring regions wanted to do their own, we figured that the best space was to focus on what's good for Canterbury. And at the end, we'll have to decide what's best for Selwyn based on that. But it'll mean we can understand the Christchurch, the Huronui, Kakoura, Ashburton down to Waitaki situation with clarity. Thanks, Murray and Lane, for coming in. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carries. On pages 176 and 177, there's a register of documents to be signed and sealed. Has someone move that? Miller and Reid. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried.
Mr. Mayor, before we move into PX,
yes,
I wonder if we're going to have consideration of the issues raised in public forum. Yes, I do have a question on the process, if I may, which is they've highlighted the change in the way we fund things and the impact that it has potentially has on their operations, and they won't be the only community group potentially that has this. Are we going to get a report in our LTP considerations on these impacts, or are we going to wait for submissions on the LTP itself?
David, I'll get you to answer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the missing link was the quantum of that funding, the impact of the change in policy, and a question that somebody around the table was asked around alternate funding sources. So that will all come back in a report in the next month or so, Councillor Alexander.
As part of our LTP preparation, yes.
Just, sorry.
Councillor Hassan.
Just with regards to wages, quite a few of these not-for-profit organisations, the contestable fund is for projects that have to be reported back on, and all of them are struggling to find a contestable fund that will actually deliver on wages. I just wonder whether there's an opportunity for a group like this to actually try and apply to the Ministry of Social Development to see if there's any appropriate funding available for wages, or even, you know, the Education Board, and looking at changing their policy and their models to accommodate groups like this within the school system and our young people, just because it's an issue that a lot of organisations are really going to be struggling with.
I can only speak with history that's not up to date, and there may have been differences since I was involved, but that had been a conversation that was had, and there had actually been some work nationally to try and look at what that could be. But for the youth workers in schools, it was quite key that it needed to be local buy-in for local young people around local schools, local churches, local businesses, local councils, all saying this is what we need to do for our young people, rather than here's some cash, make something happen. So the buy-in to wanting to see the outcomes is important. And on the note about contestable funding from council, which was brought up, it's because they currently receive partnership funding in the same way that Te Ara Kakariki and Lincoln and Warratown Trust receive partnership funding to do something that we see as a really good outcome, but we don't necessarily get involved with ourselves. 24/7 fits into that vein, so we don't invite them to come and claim for the contestable fund that we have as well. So that'll come back in a future report. Move into public excluded. Move Gallagher, seconded Lemon. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. And we'll just take a 5-minute break and allow those to leave who would like to.